Yeah.
Oh, right. Here we go, folks. This is our first clinic Q&A, my first clinic Q&A. I'm Bonnie Rose Weaver. I'm an herbalist here in San Francisco, and tonight we are just going to be answering some questions. So, um, feel free for everybody who's live to use the chat, or I'll invite you to unmute, whatever you feel more comfortable with. I am going to go in order of the questions that came in. And then if there's other questions that bubble up or people have clarifying questions, we will have time for that as well. So our first question is Grace. Do you want to say your question or do you want me to read it?
I can describe it. I mean, I kind of forgot exactly what I wrote, but so if you want to read it, that's fine. I maybe it'd be good to remind myself of like exactly how I worded it.
Well, why don't what's on your mind right now? Just like genuinely.
Yeah, I guess basically, my general question slash would love to just hear your thoughts on. I've been having some weird health things like the past kind of year, and been doing tons of like Western medicine, appointments and procedures, and haven't really come up with very conclusive answers, which has been super frustrating. And I I'm a huge believer in like food as medicine and the power of plants and all that. And I guess specifically, I've had this weird like knee pain slash like arthritis feeling sensation for like a year. And it's kind of ebbed and flowed, but despite doing all these different things, like I haven't tried like prescription medication, but I have been doing like different gut supplements and things, and it still hasn't really resolved. And yeah, so I guess I would just love to hear if you have recommendations for herbs or things to do food wise for, yeah, like these kind of weird autoimmune type symptoms. Yeah, let me know if you
Yeah.
want to clarify anything.
No, that's all really great information. Thank you. And thank you for sharing just about what you've been going through. I'm sure a lot of people, even if they're not having these exact symptoms, can relate to like not knowing what's going on and being frustrated and having a lot of appointments. So, yeah, can I ask you a couple more questions?
Yeah, for sure.
How old are you?
I just turned 27.
Okay. And you said it's been going on for about a year.
I've had kind of gut issues and like generalized fatigue and anemia for a long time, like kind of like 10 years now, but
Okay.
this past year, I this like knee thing has started. And at first it was in one knee and then it was in both knees. And I've done like autoimmune screening blood tests before and it's been borderline, but then most recently a few months ago it was negative. And so
Mm.
yeah, I guess it's been the past year, I feel like I distinctly feel like there's been more symptoms. And I think it mirrors like went through a huge transition this year with like work and life. And I was kind of actually ironically like pre-med. Like I was trying to like do the med school thing again and that got really intense and now I'm not doing that anymore. But yeah, so obviously like I think there's some stress involvement there, but the past year I think has been a big one for
Yeah.
symptoms.
Yeah, and so there, yeah, it's a little hard without like, doing a full intake with all these like others history and
Yeah.
again, I appreciate you for bringing that up. I think what I will kind of start off with is from my perspective as an energetic herbalist and really looking at like where is the energy going, where is it coming from, where are you losing it, where are you gaining it? Huge things I'm looking at in what you've described is definitely like your stress, your kind of nervous system picture. I would be curious about, like you said, like I knew before you said it, what has been going on the past year, right? What was that change? Um, and yeah, I mean, with a lot of it, autoimmune stuff, right? Like you can be susceptible to something and then it really can get turned on with higher levels of stress. And it can be like an event or like an ongoing kind of stressful dynamic. And so I think. if all I knew was what you just shared with me, I would encourage you to look into just almost anything you can do to support your nervous system. So, you know, sounds like you did like lessen your load with like academics, supporting your nervous system with herbs can look like nervine. So like relaxing herbs like chamomile, catnip, lavender, all really great, effective and gentle. And then a nervine that I love that's more kind of like connected to like muscles and tendons, which you're talking about with like the knee, I think of with passion flower. And there's like more sedating nervines, like California poppy is a great one for folks who are like having a hard time sleeping, which can be a really big part of like the healing kind of like push-pull. And also people will often use valerian as like a stronger one. I I always encourage people to start on the lower end, like what I mentioned first, because I think that we often walk around thinking that that we are almost like a computer, that we have like an off-on button. And one of the other questions coming up is about like anxiety and mood swings. And a lot of what I see with that type of picture is that people, if you imagine like a thermometer and like down at the thermometer and the bottom of the thermometer is lower temperature, and higher would be warmer. People are walking around at like a very hot kind of like stress level a lot of the time, and it's very common. It's very like almost like expected part of our culture because we live in a culture where things can turn off and on. People are just like, okay, 3 cups of coffee, let's go, like da 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 da, like super overcommitted, overstimulated, you know. And so a lot of times what we need to do is just like lower the thermometer of stress and anxiety. And that can just look like bringing some of those nervines in even before you realize that you need it, before the panic attack, before the insomnia, etc. And
Mm.
so there's that. And then the other thing is, of course, the adaptogens, which are herbs that help us deal with stress and anxiety. Sorry, they're herbs that help us reduce the effects of emotional or physical stress. So that can look like Tulsi tea, which you can get, you know, really easily in like a prepackaged tea in the grocery store. It can be ashwagandha. There's other adaptogens. So those are usually the two that I go for first. And they are incredible. They can really help us feel less overwhelmed um, and like have more resilience. However, there is a bit of a concern there as far as like we don't want people to, they're kind of like a superpower, and we don't want people to just like go on to adaptogens and stay on adaptogens because a lot of times what people don't realize is that they need to like learn how to turn down their thermometer. They also need to learn how to say no and say like, sorry, like I can't take that job, or like I need more time to do my whatever, stop whatever, like I don't want to date you anymore, or like I need to move, or you know, like these boundaries of like this is not working for me and I need to address that in my life holistically.
Right, as opposed to just taking a pill, even if that's like a plant. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, and so yeah, I think about that. I think about the last year of your life, kind of like what's shifted, what's been going on. And then I mean, you mentioned also like that you had stuff starting when you were like 17. So like looking at that, are there parallels like um, you know, what are some of the emotional kind of like roots there or habits or patterns, like what's not serving you? And sounds like you've been on the path for a long time. So I
Well, it's kind of
commend
funny
you.
because the parallels is real. Like I
Mhm.
actually turned away, like I did this whole thought process in college and I turned away from like the whole med school thing and felt like I recovered a lot physically, emotionally, mentally, like in every way the past few years and then kind of rethinking about things again. And so it feels like I feel physically and mentally, emotionally like my 17-year-old self. And
Mm.
I think this time around, I recognized that maybe a little faster and was like, okay, no, like stop. And so, yeah, I feel like all the things you're saying make a lot of sense, and you have to like look at the whole picture and not just. And I guess also like maybe I'm kind of an impatient person, and I feel like sometimes it just takes time. Like even if you remove the main stressor, it's not like okay, your body is just like now it's fine, like your body has to process and feel safe again and stuff as well. So, but those herbs definitely seem very doable. Like chamomile, I love chamomile and lavender and stuff, and so yeah, I'll definitely check those out.
Yeah, they're friendly. They taste good. They can make a really nice tea. You can get them in tea bags or bulk. And if you're in the city, I always recommend Rainbow Grocery as a good resource.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for chatting about that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for the good question. You also mentioned before, like foods as healing, and
Mm,
I definitely think food is absolutely a big part of the picture. And um, I guess I was like anticipating you asking about that too, and I was just thinking
mm,
like it's so hard also to talk about food because everyone has like different opinions and things that work for them. But like mostly plants.
makes sense.
Whole
Yeah.
foods and mostly plants. Um, broths, well cooked,
Mm,
like meat, if you eat meat, and um, yeah. Um, does that feel complete?
oh yeah, I definitely am with you on that. I think I'm always because I think so much about food, probably like to a like harmful degree, and
Mhm.
it's like one of those topics for me that I feel like I know a lot, but then I get so turned around the more I read that I'm like I don't even know what's real anymore, like is anything like, and then it's like yeah, it's a love-hate relationship, but it's good to hear like your perspective on it, and it pretty much matches with like what I what I think is the way to go at this point in my life at least.
Awesome. Yeah, and it sounds like you've done a lot of thinking. I will recommend to you my favorite cookbook, because it might take some of the kind of like over mental capacity out of it. It's called Naturally Nourished by Sarah Britton, and she has a blog online called My New Roots. So she has
Yeah,
a lot of recipes online that are also available easily. And
sweet.
I think what I like about her meals is that they are generally like lower in like gluten and dairy, which a lot of times is hard for people to digest, and they may or may not know that. And so just kind of shifting towards that can be like nice and also like easeful, or like a less work for the body. Um,
Mm,
and then also, yeah, she just really focuses on vegetables, and she talks about like soaking your grains and beans. And um, I think it's a really kind of, there are a lot of lovely kind of combinations and recipes in her, all of her work.
that's awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna move on to the next question. And also, Lori, since you're here, if any questions pop up, feel free to unmute or drop them in the chat. Um, Maggie had a question, and Maggie wrote, looking for herbs to help with menstruation and general stress. So I wish Maggie could speak more to this, but without any other context, um, menstruation and general stress. It's interesting that she links those. It sounds like maybe like there could be an issue of like overwhelm or stress like before the period or maybe during the period. Um, and so there's a couple different ways to think about this. One is that there's an herb I love called chaste tree. It's also known as Vitex berry. And so, what it's really well known for is kind of helping to regulate the hormones. So, if somebody is having like a menstrual cycle that feels like a little bit overwhelming or out of balance in some way, they will take chaste tree regularly. So, like uh 2 or 3 times a day, every day. And you want to take chaste tree like at least for 3 months before you really start to notice if there is a difference. Because if you think about kind of like the circadian rhythm of our day-to-day energy, we have the focus is on like the nervous system kind of resetting every day. Whereas in hormones, we have the reset or like the full cycle completing at 28 to 30 days. And so with that being said, you basically have like one cycle of the menstrual cycle taking much longer than like the nervous system, right? So give it a few days, right? In this case, we have to give it a few months to really see if there is um a difference. And so yeah, that's kind of like my go-to herb as far as like when somebody's having menstrual issues. And again, if Maggie was here, we could ask her a little bit more about what's going on. And then I think stress, like, what we talked about with Grace's question, looking at nervines, like, a big thing for a lot of people is the wind down time, the hi sleep hygiene of like 1 to 2 hours before bed, reducing any blue lights from computers, even like turning down the lights and kind of creating, especially as we're going into the winter and in the fall, just like you kind of letting the eyes and the body adjust to like a darker environment. Um, in that time, you can take tinctures or teas like the nervines we discussed, chamomile, catnip, lavender, rose, um, damiana. These are all like pretty tasty. And also like the bagged tea that you get if any of these like sleepy time, that kind of thing, can be drunk during the wind down time. The trouble, a couple things I want to mention. The trouble with the tea is that if you drink tea and your goal is to sleep, if you're having any short type of insomnia, then it's likely that you will wake up because you need to pee, because most teas are diuretic. And then additionally, you want to make sure that you are having a medicinal dose of the tea rather than just like a tasty tea. And so just like a dunk of a tea bag isn't really going to give you that medicinal effect. And that's where you get people saying like, oh, herbs don't work, or that doesn't work for me, because they're not actually receiving a therapeutic dose. Um, so I really love a bulk tea section. Like I mentioned, we have a few resources in SF. You can order them online. If for some reason you don't even have that, you can just get 2 tea bags and let them steep for 20 minutes. And that's going to give you like the medicinal dose that you're looking for. So when in doubt, you can find a chamomile tea bag at like a Denny's, they're very common. So that can be helpful. And then general stress, I think we kind of covered that with the adaptogen conversation. All right. Any questions or comments about that? Menstruation? Okay. Our next question comes from Claire, and she was asking about perimenopause. So, similar question to menstruation. Claire wrote, I'm wondering generally herbs for support of perimenopause, varying symptoms, but in particular anxiety/mood swings and temperature regulation issues, usually right before my period. So, again, I really wish Claire was here and she could speak more to it, but I will do my best regardless. So particular anxiety and mood swings right before her period. There's a couple different ways to look at this. If Claire was here, I would absolutely ask her if she is on HRT or HT hormone replace or HR hormone replacement or hormone replacement therapy, which a lot of people take, which is a pharmaceutical, and sometimes that helps symptoms go away, and sometimes there's remaining symptoms. And that definitely is a picture of, what's going on for somebody. Just like I would consider any pharmaceutical, for a client. Um, and with anxiety or mood swings, I would also kind of like what we talked about earlier is like looking at what is bringing that anxiety. Is there a particular situation, place, person? If if it's possible to just remove that, then go ahead. And if not, um, are many herbs similar to what we talked about with the nervines, but more specifically, I love an herb called wood betony for kind of like light general anxiety. Also, skullcap is really nice for anxiety. Skullcap can be a bit bitter, so I recommend it more as a tincture as well as the wood betony, both tinctures couple times a day, could be added to tea or just taken directly in the mouth or with water, maybe like 10 drops couple times a day for either of those. Um, Mood swings, most likely, I guess I would also ask her if she was like eating regularly, right? Having enough. One of the big factors in perimenopause is that you kind of there's a huge decrease in estrogen, which is the whole like reason that it happens. And so the body, every organ in the body has estrogen receptors, and so perimenopause is affecting every organ in the body, every system. And essentially what's happening is if you are playing like with Legos, this is an analogy I'm working on. So stay with me. If you were playing with Legos and you had like a bunch of red Legos and green Legos and blue Legos and black Legos, all of a sudden in perimenopause, you just don't have your red Legos anymore. And so now you have to build whatever you're building with less Legos and less color variety. And maybe with the mood swings, we could liken it to like sometimes you have your red Legos and sometimes you don't. And so you essentially have to get more wise with how you use your energy and how you support your body. So a huge part of perimenopause is self-care. And I think that there's like almost like a irony to it because I think a lot of time, not everyone becomes a mother. And a lot of times, people who have become mothers, they're going through perimenopause and they're realizing they have to stop taking care of their kiddos as much as they need to take care of themselves because they've let that go by the wayside. And so, a huge lesson for in perimenopause is to focus on ourselves a little bit more than we used to. Also, to try to do things at the same time every day. Because, like I said, if you just don't have those red Legos, then you're going to have to figure out how to go without them. And so, being consistent and allowing the body to have the consistency and the rhythm is really helpful. Um, so I think part of what I was going to say there too is with the mood swings, right? We want to think about are you eating regularly? Are you getting like the just actual building blocks that you need to like maintain like composure and mood and all that? Feeding the brain, healthy fats. I know there's this huge a lot of people, one of the like top three concerns around perimenopause is weight gain. And I really like to encourage folks to combat the fat phobia that we have in our culture because people who allow some of the weight gain to happen, like 30 pounds or so, they have less difficult perimenopause because the fat cells can be a source of estrogen. And so that kind of like counterbalance. Um, and then she also mentioned temperature regulation. So, and then she also said this is right before her period. So, there can be some ways to almost do like an herbal hormone replacement. Some people will do this with like soy products, soy milks, tofu, tempeh, known as a phytoestrogen, plant estrogen. Um, there is some concern with having that kind of like flare up or activate any, not flare up, but like it basically, if somebody has a hormone dependent cancer, this would not be a good remedy for them. Um, and that's usually something that you know that you have. And or if it runs in your if you have cancer in your family, like it, I always recommend people learning about what kind of cancers are in their family so that they know if that's something that they might be sensitive to. So yeah, temperature regulation, honestly, if it's regulation, which means that you're getting hot and cold, that's really hard. If it's hot, there's always like cooling foods, cucumber, mint, um, melons, mint tea, um, can be really nice. You can do hydrosol, so like a plant water and like spritz that on the face, like rose, or you could do like a cooling like basil or something. Um, is basil cooling? It's kind of both. It's like a mint, but it's a little warming. So whatever hydrosol suits you. Um, and people will love like there's like little personal fans and stuff that people will get and like wear. Like there's like a kind of like a collar thing that people will wear. And it's kind of funny because with the hot flashes, it honestly it kind of just comes down to that. It almost feels like petty solutions, but whatever will make you comfortable. Um, there was one last thought. I think it's gone. Um, yeah. Any questions or comments about the perimenopause stuff we're talking about?
Can I ask about this a little bit?
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, I'm definitely in that window. I also have like definitely struggled with PMDD like throughout all of my cycles. And I was just wondering if there are like any other herbs that I know you're talking a little bit about like the foods and taking care of your basic needs for like the mood stuff, but like is red raspberry leaf like something that helps if you drink it regularly, or are there other herbs that would be like, I don't know, just kind of helpful with more of the mood stuff specifically?
Yeah. Is it okay if I ask you a couple more questions?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Are you, how long has the PMDD been going on?
I feel like, let's see, probably since, I mean, probably earlier than this, but I really noticed it after I had my kid when I was like 28. So like once I stopped breastfeeding, my hormones were just like wild and have never really,
Mm,
I feel like my cycles are pretty regular, but the mood stuff is like super extreme.
hmm.
And now I'm 46 and I'm just like, oh my gosh, is this going to get worse? Or am I already, have I been in training this whole time for menopause? Like, I'm just like, what's ahead? I don't know.
Yeah. The wild thing about menopause, perimenopause is that it really has a broad stroke of life, and people, experience it in so many different ways. People can start experiencing it in their mid 30s, mid to late
Mm.
30s, and it can be as long as 2 years or as long as 14 years. So it is really quite difficult to pin down. But let me just ask you a couple more questions. Are you on birth control?
So I wasn't like forever,
Yeah.
but I just recently, like a couple years ago, I was diagnosed with endometriosis, which was like not really surprising, but I have like a big growth on one of my ovaries, which is how they actually diagnosed it. So
Hmm.
at that point, I finally decided to try a Mirena IUD because like I've been anemic, my periods are like pretty debilitating, like pain wise and heavy bleeding. And so I finally was, and I'm very sensitive to hormones, so I was super scared to try it, but I did like about a year and a half ago.
Mm.
get that. And it actually like has not made my moods worse, and it has made my periods so much better. My iron levels are better, my
Mm.
red blood cell count. So like it's actually been like really helpful, but I
But the
definitely have
PMDD
that.
continues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
hmm hmm
Yeah. So it sounds like the Mirena did something similar to what I was first thinking, which was to try the Chase tree.
Mm.
But you can't do Chase tree because you're on hormones. Like it just wouldn't make
Oh,
sense because
okay. I had tried it in the past and like
Mm.
for like long stretches, and I just like never really felt like I tried all the things I felt like, and then I was
Yeah.
finally like, okay, I don't know.
And the
But that's good to know.
Mirena is it a remind me, is it a progesterone based?
Yeah, it's progesterone only IUD. It's supposed to stay localized, but obviously, like your blood flows throughout your entire body. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love
Yeah.
how they say that.
You haven't been, it's not your PMDD is not correlated to the birth control. It's more you feel like it's more post breastfeeding.
Yeah, just all my cycles. Yeah. I think like if anything, I feel like because I'm not losing so much blood in the last like year and a half, I think my overall energy is maybe a little bit better,
Hmm.
because I was feeling like super depleted from that for a really long time. But yeah.
And the PMDD does it come on and just because we're using abbreviations, it's
Oh yeah. It's like
premenstrual
dysphoric disorder or something. It's like PMS, but like worse,
and it's
where
more kind of around depression feelings.
depression, just like rage, all just like I just don't feel like myself for like probably like a couple weeks out of the month. And
Yeah,
then I'll start to bleed and I'll be like, oh, okay, I think this is how I am, like and then it'll just kind of kick in and I'm just like, oh, it's just so frustrating because it's like, yeah, it just feels like a switch flips and I'm like a different person.
totally. And that's exactly how I describe hormones. I think
Yeah.
when we talk about perimenopause, I also find myself realizing and remembering how we need to just have more of like a dialogue about like what are the hormones and what do they feel like and that's that switch feeling or like almost like a drug like you can't not do this thing right because like you can't not be drunk if you're drunk you know
Yeah. Yeah.
okay so how long is it before you start bleeding that you feel this way?
It's usually like a couple weeks. I feel like it's around ovulation. Like it'll just be like probably right after ovulation. I'm just like, oh, here we go into the
Yeah,
like the anxiety, yeah, super sensitive to like everything in my environment. I'm like my nervous system's pretty sensitive at baseline, but like, yeah, it's just like I feel like this raw exposed nerve and like just a lot.
mm. Yeah. I think that a really great place to start for you, Lori, would be to do an overnight infusion, which
hmm
can include the raspberry leaf.
Okay.
Have you heard of this overnight infusion before?
Yeah, yeah. I've actually like I work in Western healthcare, but I've been like trying to study herbs a little bit because I'm super interested and have been for a long time. But yes, I've been like making these infusions. I started with like nettle infusions and then I've been adding the red raspberry.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything else to add into the mix, I would love
I
ideas.
think those are really great. I'm just thinking about kind of like nourishing you and
Okay.
um I think that there's probably some like other herbs that could be helpful. Like, I don't know that I would put them in the tea. I mean, the tea. So
Okay.
generally with the overnight infusion, what I do is nettles, raspberry leaf, lemon balm, and then a little bit of like a quote unquote flavor. So it could be like mint or hibiscus or ginger. I
Okay.
personally really like ginger because nettles is very energetically cold and cooling. And so unless you want that, like we're talking about temperature regulation, unless you really want like a coldness in your life, the ginger can kind of like counterbalance the cold and the warm of ginger.
Cool.
And you can get like where I go at Rainbow Grocery. I don't make any money from Rainbow Grocery. I just love them. Um, this is not a paid advertisement for Rainbow Grocery, but you can get in the herb section like a chopped and dried version of of ginger, which I'll put into my tea. So that I'll do at night. You can actually do hot or cold water. A lot of people say to do hot, but I've done both, and I've heard that the cold, like the room temperature water, can be just as effective, and that's what I found.
Mm,
Um, Potentially even more effective, and it's less work. You don't have to boil any water.
love it.
And then, yeah, you want to drink that in the morning. So let it sit for at least 8 hours and then refrigerate it after that if you're not going to drink it right away. Can last up to 2 days, so 48 hours in the fridge. After that, you want to recycle or compost it because it's just going to be, growing bacteria. So I think that could be a helpful kind of like baseline for you. I also was thinking about milky oats because it's also nourishing. And
Yeah.
people will put the oats into the overnight tea. Actually, that I should have mentioned that. Nettles, raspberry leaf, um, oat straw, and lemon balm are the main four, and then the flavoring. And sometimes I just do one of those with something else. I mean, it's really, it's up to you.
Okay.
But separately, milky oats is has to be taken as a tincture because it's the preserved part of the oat seed that has been uh, preserved at the time when it has this like latexy white goop that is in it, and then if it's just dried as tea, there's no way that like you can get that medicinal effect. But milky oats is very nourishing to the nervous system, to the nerves. It's really helpful for kind of what you were saying with like that like raw feeling.
Mhm.
And that can often come from like being burnt out, being like overloaded with stress, which is a theme we've been
Yeah.
coming back to and just very common, in our modern world. It's also really great for like nerve pain, MS, like anywhere where the nerves are kind of like being exposed and raw. So that's like a panacea, honestly, of our time of like nourishing the nerves because we've like kind of overdone it.
Cool.
And yeah, I mean, I think that there's other things that you could try, like um, it's not really totally coming to me right now. I think I would be, yeah, you
No,
can't.
that sounds amazing. I've been
Okay.
like
Yeah.
thinking about the Milky Oats and like I've tasted them a couple times and I was like, this feels right. Like
Yeah.
the flavor, that specific the Milky Oats. But does that take a while? Like, is that something to take longer term, right?
Yeah, I would take it for a month or so before like
Okay.
deciding if it's like something to keep doing.
Okay,
Um,
awesome.
yeah, and I guess I'll just say too, like I do think like finding the right nervine or adaptogen to work with. I'm also thinking about the liver because the liver is associated with anger. So like
Hmm.
supporting that.
Okay.
And that's also being impacted like with the hormones, like the liver processes the hormones. So um, yeah, I think that there's a lot of different angles to take, and I feel like when I get a question like yours or like the one that Claire brought, it can be hard to give like a general answer because it's like it really depends on the person. And like if you weren't on the IUD, I'd be like, oh, maybe try Chase Tree first. But because you are, I'm recommending like the nourishing herbs.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's super helpful. I really appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. Thanks for chiming in.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one more question. Thank you both for joining live, and hello to the virtual space of people in the future. So this question comes from Julianne, and the question is herbal remedies for eczema, either topical or things I can ingest are good too. And this is such a great question because a lot of people don't realize that eczema is something that we want to address kind of internally. We often will think of something like a skin issue as a topical approach. And if I had to choose one, I would put nothing on topically and I would just give somebody a really good kind of like immune system and digestive system tonic. I'll say that more about that in a moment. Topically, the first thing I'm reaching for is like a calendula salve or a green salve, like plantain, anything that's like moistening and gonna support kind of like the proliferation of the skin cell tissue is great. So, a lot of herbalists sell this, and you can get them at like shops or you can make them yourself. So calendula, plantain are the main two ingredients. You could also look at stuff with like comfrey. Um, and those can be really helpful for us, especially for like symptoms. I also like putting a salve on at night because then you're not like washing the skin or like somehow accidentally removing the salve because you're just sleeping. So you can keep it by your bed. Internally, what I have seen work really well is like a combination of liver tonics. So like dandelion or burdock can be really nice. Those can be burdock can be eaten as a food. Essentially, use it in any way that you would use a carrot. So you can cook it, you can pickle it, you can eat it raw. People will cook it. Well, yeah, I wouldn't probably eat it raw for medicinal effect, but it can be something that you can buy at a grocery. A lot of like Asian or Japanese grocery stores will have them, especially in the winter. And guess who else sells it? Rainbow Grocery. But only in the winter time because it is a root, so it's best harvested in the winter. Um, Also known as gobo, um, and it's a great tincture. Dandelion. We'll eat the greens in salad. That's not as great of the leaf is not as great of a liver herb. It's more of a nutrient dense green and also a good diuretic, so helps us like pee. But for the liver support, we're really looking at the root of dandelion. So those, and I mentioned also like the immune support, looking at maybe a little bit of echinacea or potentially some lymphatic support from like red root is another herb that I'll use for immune support stimulation. Um, and so yeah, basically like really supporting the liver, supporting the immune system, and whether that's tincture or tea. Tea is probably going to be bitter from everything I just described. It's a lot of roots. Doing that for a few months. And if you don't see a difference after taking that tincture, I would be shocked. And I've really seen like miracles, like eczema miracles, like people who have just really suffered with eczema for years, and then trying a tincture like that, and it just really transforming their life because they're no longer discomforted by their skin. So, with that, does anybody have any other questions? Bubble up.
If I could I ask one more thing?
Yeah, please.
Um, this is actually for like I have a couple of friends that are in the midst of ending these like huge relationships in their life. And I was just wondering if there's anything that you would suggest for like heart support, like that's gentle, supportive. I feel like a lot of people could probably use this in the world right now, but just like, yeah, things for like to support with like that grief and process.
Yeah, totally. Um, and as I was mentioning earlier with Grace's question, like how it can ending things can be really helpful, right? Like that they can be really hard. But
Uh,
something that I notice a lot in my work is like when people are choosing to end things, they're often moving towards a more meaningful life and a more meaningful path that ultimately is good. So, big silver lining.
Totally.
Yeah, general like heart support and like grief support. Interestingly enough, I wrote about grief in my newsletter that comes out tomorrow. Um, but a big one is rose. So, just being really gentle, soothing. Rose kind of has an affinity to the heart. Um, and that can be even in like scent, right? So aromatherapy, whether it's like creams, lotion, like body products, you can, do like a little roller. Like I keep this little roller right by my computer, just as like an aromatherapy. And I'll just like put it on my wrist and then smell it. And you can put it in tea. It can be a little overpowering because it is astringent, but just like a pinch can be really nice. And yeah, it can be really like protective as well as like soothing. Another one that people will also look to, which is in the rose family, is hawthorn, hawthorn
Mm.
berry usually. But people use hawthorn leaf and flower a lot too. So honestly, whichever one you have or is accessible, that's a nice gentle tea. And for what we're talking about, like this emotional part, I think it's important also to mention just like that the dosage can represent kind of that level of like when I'm working on the physical body, I'm gonna be giving a higher dose because our body is like the densest form of energy that needs like more to make a shift.
Mm.
But emotional and then beyond that, spiritual um, disharmony or dis-ease is going to have a lower dosage. So like if somebody came to me and they're like, I have all this heartache for the world and for my breakup, I would maybe say like try a couple drops of like a rose flower essence, once or twice a day. Flower essences are like a vibrational or energetic medicine where we've like preserved the beauty and presence of a flower in water, and then that water is preserved in brandy. And those are really effective, especially taken like right before going to bed and then right upon waking, where you have these kind of like portals of like your into your subconscious.
Mm.
So that can be like a really profound medicine too, and surprising because it's gentle, right? Like
Mm.
at the top of the call, we were talking about how people will often go to like a stronger nervine, like the valerian and the cow poppy, and sometimes that is indicated. Um, but I've worked a lot in herbalism to know that if I recommend trying something that's on the lower end, it can be just as effective, and it's like it's like breaking the system, right? It's like that cycle of like intensity of like, I need this, I need to go all the way, I need to do it 110%, and just saying like, well, what if you just ease into your evening rather than like working up until 10 minutes before bedtime or something like that, and
Mhm.
really disrupting that intensity. So yeah, flower essences are lovely. They can be used like internally, they can be integrated into like a spray or a lotion. And yeah, those are
Awesome.
powerful too.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Before you all go, I do want to make a quick little plug. So if you're not on my newsletter, I have the link for you here. Every Wednesday, I have a whale mail, which I know is loved by many. And then if you're interested in chatting more, I just wanted to share the link too to my curiosity call, which is just 15 minutes to kind of chat about specific issues to see if we might be a good fit for working together. So for those of us on the call now or in the future, check those two out. And with that, I think we're done.
Thank you so much, Bonnie.
Yeah. Thank you both. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for
thank you.
showing up. Have
That
a
was
great night.
great.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Take care.
You too.